America, my name is Osei-Frimpong, and let me tell you, this man, Ben Shapiro, is out there creating anti-Semites, kind of like the way Iowa grows corn. It's amazing that such a Zionist can be so effective. And I'm not just talking about firing Candace Owens or firing Nick Fuentes for being a little bit too not appropriately pro-Israel for his network and him thinking it's his right to fire him because it's his business. And it's his media business, and his media business should be able to fire people he doesn't agree with. That's already like going to be a little bit dicey with respect to like you're firing Americans for having views about American politics when their job is to have views about American politics. So really, they're not acting like tools of your particular understanding of your religious ideology. So you're firing them for not being tools of your particular religious ideology, which I think is a dicey thing to do for Americans. So forget the firing of Candace Owens and the firing of Nick Fuentes, which ended up radicalizing them as they create now anti-Semites left and right. I'm talking about this. Think about this. This is Nick Fuentes. This is Ben Shapiro yesterday.
If you're a young person and you can't afford to live here, then maybe you should not live here. I mean, that is a real thing. Yeah, I know that we've now grown up in a society that says that you deserve to live where you grew up, but the reality is that the history of America is almost literally the opposite of that. The history of America is you go to a place where there is opportunity. And if the opportunities are limited here and they're not changing, then you really should try to think about other places where you have better opportunities. If you're a young person,
if you can't afford to live there, then you need to move because it's inhospitable to your finances. Now, mind you, I am a son of the Great Migration, pretty much where black people were chased out of the South for having ideas to greener pastures. And in a well-ordered world, they should have been able to stay where they are. In, Mississippi, my people are from South Carolina and Florida. My mom's people, my dad's people are from Ghana. But there's this idea that you should be able to stay where you are from. And that's part of how you build a meaningful life and build a meaningful connection with the property, with your family, with the jobs in the industry in your town that you have hopefully determined by participating in some form of local government. So we're not just a community of wanderers damned to wandering anytime the market dissipates our sensibility. And if you're an American first person, which I am, you should actually respect that and help people stay in their place and have policies that support people being able to stay in their place as opposed to, say, maybe get pushed out because they can't afford taxes, right? So if taxes go up and now you get pushed out, you're either pro-pushing out people or not pro-pushing out people from living in the place that they were raised. And I'm pro people being able to live in the places they were raised and start meaningful communities from where they went to school and send their kids to the same schools that they went to and then have an investment in making that school even better in the particular way that it wants to get better. That's my version of America, and that's my version of family freedom. Right? I want to determine my family in such a way that they have the opportunity to stay by me. Now, they could freely decide as they become of age, of nonage, to move away, but I want them to be able to come back. And I need an American society that enables me to create a quality of family so that they can come back and live by me. I'm already having plans of building a house in my backyard. I got just enough acreage that I can do that. I got in my spot. Thank goodness I bought when I did. But I did not buy under a 50-year mortgage. I bought under a 15-year mortgage, which means that's almost paid off. And I'm happy that's the case. But the idea that I might be able to be priced out of my place, or my kids won't be able to live by me if they choose to, and I want them to, but we still can't make it happen because of other people with money driving up property values or whatever, that is anathema to my sensibility of my rights as an American family man. Distinct from my rights as American civilian, which is just to participate in market-based society. Ben Shapiro doesn't understand that, but there's a way in which he does, because if I made the same argument for Israelis on the kibbutz having the right to have their family by them in Israel, he would understand, which means that his heart is with Israel, but not so much with America. And what does that mean? I swear, I worry about the American conservative movement, because if the only Jews, like some of these white Christians, meet are folks like Ben Shapiro, who are, the only loud, like explicitly Jewish people these white Americans see are folks like Ben Shapiro, they're going to turn anti-Semitic. Like, that's the kind of talk that leads to pogroms. Literally, if you read Hannah Arendt's chapter on anti-Semitism and her origin to totalitarianism, she talks about the resentment that's come from like Jews not being loyal to anybody's soil because they were actually not allowed to buy property, but they use that as an excuse to now like become merchants, selling money to landed gentry on all sides of wars and amassing all manners of power without having any sort of responsibility to a people. And so all we need American Jews to do is have responsibility to America. And then that would be legitimate, right? But and America as a self-determining nation, not America as some place as a gold mine where you just come and make money, but your real allegiances are to the rights and the realization of right and family and politics and self-determination in Israel, right? So let's listen to Ben Shapiro one more time, just so you appreciate how he just does not respect American families.
Can't afford to live here, then maybe you should not live here. I mean, that is a real thing. Yeah, I know that we've now grown up in a society that says that you deserve to live where you grew up, but the reality is that the history of America is almost literally the opposite of that. The history of America is you go to a place where there is opportunity. And if the opportunities are limited here and they're not changing, then you really should try to think about other places where you have better opportunities. If you're a young person and you can't...
Ben Shapiro wants to kick grandma out of your house and out of your life. She says you have to leave. You cannot go. You cannot be from the place you are from. You cannot stay here. You cannot have your lineage here. You cannot, if the market decides that you have to go. And what does that mean? It means that there's a quality of an American immigrant mentality that just treats this place as a big market, a big place to make money. And this is a problem. This is a problem. They have no respect for the conditions of American culture, and I'm not just talking about food and baseball and the justice claims of black people. I'm talking about they have no loyalty to America, right? They just see this as a place to make money and then use that money as they want to use money, regardless of their fellow Americans. They don't even see Americans as their fellow Americans. They see people of their particular ethnicity as their fellow community members. They have no respect for Americans as fellow Americans. And so insofar as that's the case, one, that's a great way to create anti-Semites, because you've shown a complete disrespect for the ties that bind. You have no respect for other people's families if you price them out. You have no respect for their aspirations or their freedom to, like I said, raise their family. And then what else don't you have to respect? Do you have any respect for their political aspirations for self-determination? Or you think, well, if you can't afford to buy a politician like I can afford to buy a politician, then maybe you need to go somewhere where you can afford to buy a politician. You need to go to some cheaper locale where the politicians are cheaper. Functionally, it's the same argument. That's the same argument he's giving with for family, except I'm just doing it for political freedom. He's saying that if you can't afford to buy a politician in the city you're in, then you should go. It's not that we should make the political system more just. You should move to a place where you can buy a politician, because everything is just a market. Your family unity was just a market, and if the market makes it dissipate, then there it goes. And the your political rights are just a market, and if you can't participate in the market and you don't have the funds to participate in the market on a par with Shapiro's people, then you need to go to some place where local politicians are cheaper to buy. That is the same argument, right? That is the same argument, except for family. I'm doing it for politics, but it's all of the the ideology that America is just a place to make money, it's just a big market to make money, and your loyalty and your sense of culture and your sense of being can be from someplace else. And this is a sensibility that honestly a lot of H-1B visa Americans bring, and that brings us to an advance of this position. An advance of this position, and this is an advance we have to go through if we want to get to justice. The advance of this position is no, you can't just come here, treat America like a market. You need to come here and have respect for Americans and American aspirations, which includes American aspirations for like participating in their local politics and American aspirations for having a good job and American aspirations for having their family stay what they are. You have to assimilate into that view, which is a progress from Ben Shapiro. And this is what you get from a paleo-conservative, Nikki Haley's son, who is against Nikki Haley, but is pro someone like Nick Fuentes, which is a problem, which is why we're going to go from why Ben Shapiro creates anti-Semites to the anti-Semites he creates to the way out of it. Because some people think that you could just ignore this line of argument and this line of American thoughts. But if you live in a world where Ben Shapiro is going to screw up your family and blame the market, you cannot be surprised when real Americans decide that no, that is un-American. You don't care about America. You just care about making money, and you will screw up everything that makes America good. You don't care about American families, which he doesn't. He cares about Israeli families. You don't care about American politics, which he doesn't. He cares about Israeli politics. This is all just a tool that you want to use money to screw up America for what you really care about, which is not America. And that's going to create the quality of resentment that will lead to anti-Semitism. And this is what that anti-Semitism is going to look like.
A lot of people are surprised at your position on H-1B visas because you're Indian American, and H-1B visas a lot of them go to Indian Americans.
Right. Well, I mean, they shouldn't be, because I've seen how it's affected my friends and those around me. At the end of the day, my loyalty is to America. I don't have any, and that's part of assimilation. What we saw with Obama is that we had a lot of immigrants coming here, and the thought was, oh, you don't need to change. You don't need to have your loyalty to America. You could be who you are. No, you need to assimilate, and you need to act like an American and support American values and support American workers and American people. So yeah, we should absolutely ban it.
A lot of
that is actually a relatively progressive view relative to the market liberal who just wants to think America is just a place of making money and money should rule. And if you can't afford, if you can't afford the training for your job, then you need to go get a new job or get your skills up or go someplace else. If you can't afford your house, or if taxes go too high and you can't afford your place now, you need to move to someplace with better opportunities for a person of your ilk. This is people who treat America like a mercenary society are going to get got, as it were, by Americans who actually think that America actually matters as a place for families, and America actually matters as a place for Americans to get jobs, and America actually matters for a place where Americans can participate in political life with their fellow Americans, right? It's not just a place where private people can make money with their community that they really care about. No, it's a place for Americans. And if you don't really care about Americans, get out. And any program that treats America like a big place for you to make money, which in a way the H-1B visa program does, needs to be looked at. Because then it creates a culture of mercenaries who then go and try to change America. Remember, Ben Shapiro is now a thought leader, right? He wants more people to think like he does about if you can't afford to live in New York, if you can't afford to live in San Francisco, then you need to just move. We have a right and not an obligation, possibly an obligation to kick you out and let the market do its work, which we happen to control because I'm a people who make money and prioritize making money, right? So this is how Ben Shapiro creates more anti-Semites than anyone else, right? So the way from progress that leads out of Ben Shapiro is once again by Nayland Haley. However, when you talk about assimilating into American tradition, America has some awful traditions. It's an incoherent mess of traditions shot through with a quality of racism, a quality of exploitative labor relations, and we need something a little bit more ideologically thoughtful than just a rehash of American traditions. It needs to be the American tradition of self-governance, because that's the only reason we're a legitimate nation. We have a right to exist because of our institutions of self-governance. And insofar as we fail to be a nation of self-governance, then we do not have a right to exist as a state. All right? So if we're going to actually force people to assimilate into America, we need to get them to actually assimilate into the American ideal of self-governance, which means the enabling conditions of self-governance, which include property. So we need to stop talking about renting and start talking about how we get people property, real property, right? Because if you're just a renter, you're just a tool of your landlord. It's fine for a temporary solution, but we need to talk about ownership. We need to talk about ownership. And you're just a tool for your landlord. We need to talk about secure jobs as Americans, because if you don't have, you can't self-govern yourself if you're not in a secure job or have a secure sense of income, because you're just a tool of your employer, right? And Matt Walsh and Michael Knowles are learning that right now, as they are just tools of Ben Shapiro. Right? He's like a living caricature, this Ben Shapiro. Like a living caricature of everything wrong with the stories of Jewry. Jewry. He is a living caricature. All right, so you need to talk about the need for a secure job as a condition of self-governance. And a secure job where you're not alienated from what you do, which means it needs to be a unionized job where the workers have some sort of say in their working conditions, everyday working conditions. I'm still a capitalist. I just believe in unionized jobs so workers are still treated like people and have some sort of say in their conditions of work, while the board decides what we make and what we price it at. But the workers decide, if you're going to hire me for work, you got to treat me like a person. I need to be able to deal with my family and all of that stuff. So you need secure jobs. You need property ownership as like an American ideal, not just stable rents. You need property ownership as an ideal. You need political self-determination, the ability to vie for public office and have your voices heard on a par with other people who are richer than you as your right as an American. So these are the kinds of ideals we need to fight for and assimilate people into. So the real model minority is not the person who comes here and treats everyone like a tool for them to make money. The real model minority is someone like Shama Sawant, who came here and then first thing she saw is people need to make more money. Working class people need to make more money. So she started the Fight for 15, or she was very vocal in the Fight for 15. It's controversial who actually started the Fight for 15. I'm going to give it to Sawant, but she's the real model minority, not the ones who come here and use America as a get-rich scheme, while not paying heed to any of America's virtues. No, it's the one who and keep their cultures insulated from dealing with America's virtues, because if you keep your culture insulated from America while being in America, you can exploit American deficiencies, which is what Ben Shapiro does. He makes money by exploiting American deficiencies, cultural deficiencies, not improving them, exploiting them. And, there's this James Baldwin quote where he says he's tired of immigrants coming here and coming to America on Monday, and then by Thursday calling him the N-word, the national word. And because they're trying to make money by exploiting America's cultural deficiencies, not by actually making the country better. Right? Shama Sawant and, quite a few immigrants actually come here and immediately, Kwame Ture is another one. You come here and immediately you're the best kind of American because you actually move America towards justice and the American ideal of self-governance and the enabling conditions of self-governance, right? So they're the real model minorities, not this guy. But I am a. Let me read some of the comments now. We lost majority home ownership in 2008. Yeah, black home ownership levels is at 42% right now, 43%, which is pretty much the same as it was back in the 40s. So we have not made gains. We have not made gains in the kinds of gains we have, and we're kind of confused. My Horace Grant looking goggles. Yeah, so here's the deal. Like, I'm the coach of my kids' cross-country team and my kids' soccer team, so I need glasses. I lost my old pair of glasses, but I need glasses that can take a little bit of punishment because I'm hard on my glasses. I read in bed, and then I go out and I bang around with the kids, and I need to be able to see while I do what I do on the soccer field and when I'm reading my books. So I needed, and I'm not on the market, so I don't need to actually look particularly comely. So I got my big glasses, and I can go and play sports and not worry about it. I almost got the goggles for everyday glasses, sport goggles for everyday glasses, and but I thought that would be a little bit too on the nose, a little bit too much. So you're just gonna have to get used to me in these. All right, so to be the best kind of American is to come here and assimilate into the ideals of self-determination, which means helping your fellow Americans with the culture, as opposed to just exploit the American cultural deficiencies. And we have a ton of American cultural deficiencies. I mean, we're a nation that came out of colonialism, so we still have to deal with that. So the best kind of American comes to America, looks at the justice infelicities of America, and then starts unions. They fight for reparations. They actually try to make America whole. Make sure people have good jobs. Trying to make America whole and make America unified, not just exploit the deficiencies in American traditions and to get rich, right? While keeping their own cultures intact, right? So they come here with a culture, they hermetically seal that culture, and then exploit Americans. That's like a parasitic relationship with America. And that's not fine. So I think you should come here, send your kids to public school, and be good Americans that help Americans be even better Americans, not the alternative. Shawa Sawant is the real model minority. The former city council person in Seattle. I actually have an email out to her, so if someone knows her, she should talk to me. Because she came here and immediately started the Fight for 15. That's what we need minorities to do. That's what we need immigrants to do. That's the kind of Americans we need. So I think, my dad was an immigrant. So there's a quality of assimilation that's not just into American traditions as they are, because American traditions as they are a little bit dicey. It's an incoherent mess of leftover racism and all these other things. But American traditions as they could be and as they ought to be through the ideal of America, as a self-determining nation. Like the Kwame Ture. Uku says the right thing. Imagine the arrogance of saying people should forgo living amongst family and like minds, but defending the state of Israel. That's exactly what Ben Shapiro was advocating for. And if this is the guy that makes anti-Semites. Listen to this one more time.
To live here, then maybe you should not live here. I mean, that is a real thing. Yeah, I know that we've now grown up in a society that says that you deserve to live where you grew up, but the reality is that the history of America is almost literally the opposite of that. The history of America is you go to a place where there is opportunity. And if the opportunities are limited here and they're not changing, then you really should try to think about other places where you have better opportunities. If you're a young person and
there is a man who will casually use his money to destroy your family. You cannot have aspirations about where your family line is going to be and settle. You cannot even, that's something that should be negotiated within you and your children, not something that like the market decides that, well, your children are going to have to go to Iowa. Your children are going to have to go to Ohio. That's not something that should be a family decision. He's turning a family decision into a market because he wants to profit, because he might happen to want to live where you want to live. And he wants the ability to profit from that. That is not respect for America. That's not respect for American families. And that is going to create anti-Semitism. And the next progress from that is going to look like Nikki Haley's son.
A lot of people are surprised at your position on H-1B visas because you're Indian American, and H-1B visas a lot of them go to Indian Americans.
Right. Well, I mean, they shouldn't be, because I've seen how it's affected my friends and those around me. At the end of the day, my loyalty is to America. I don't have any, and that's part of assimilation. What we saw with Obama is that we had a lot of immigrants coming here, and the thought was, oh, you don't need to change. You don't need to have your loyalty to America. You could be who you are. No, you need to assimilate, and you need to act like an American and support American values and support American workers and American people. So yeah, we should absolutely ban it.
Unfortunately, that's what progress looks like, because at least Nikki Haley's son actually understands that, like, no, we can't just throw all these things to the market. We need to have respect for American jobs. We need to have respect for American families. And we need to have respect for American traditions. And we need to expect people to actually come here, if they're going to come here, to respect that and help us be a better American. The problem is the conservative tack on that is going to be the traditions as they happen to be, not as they can be legitimized through, like, the American mind thinking through what we should do as and how we could be better in terms of the American ideal of self-governance. Right? So in order to deal with Ben Shapiro, you got to go through the Nick Fuenteses and the Nayland Haley's, because they're actually a mode of progress. And you, in America, you really can't take extra steps, especially since we're a center-right nation. You can't just assume left politics. You need to go through right politics to get to where we need to get to, which is America as taking the ideals of self-determination seriously through our family institutions, through our jobs, and through our property ownership, which means we're talking about property ownership and not renting, which means we're talking about families that have the right to determine what kind of family they're going to be and not be overly determined by the market. Or even ideas about like transgenderism. You don't want, like, you want that to be a family discussion and a family decision, not something that was overly determined by, culture that's deciding that you don't get biological grandkids. These are family decisions that need to stay within the family. Also, we need an America that actually thinks about self-determination with respect to your jobs. That's not just you have to go where whomever will hire you. No, you need to be able to unionize your job and stay the job and keep the job and not be alienated from the job that you have as an American. Right? Your right to stay and still be free to talk your talk without having to worry about being fired for having the wrong position on Israel. Right? So that's what it is. That's part of the American tradition and the American ideal of the American ideal, even if it's hasn't quite been realized yet. Right? And then same with American self-governance. You need to be able to participate, vie for public office, and have your opinion heard. I'm going to the public comment section of my school board meeting tonight. Actually, I'm going to take my kids. We're going to go to a school board meeting because I need to advocate for them to put a cross-country course at the local high school, because my kids are right now in 7th, 5th, and 3rd grade, and they're pretty good cross-country runners, and they're going to run eventually. And so I need to start the process now so that by the time they get there, my kids can excel at the cross-country course at the high school. So I need to be able to have these plans and then realize them through my own will and means, and that's what it means to be an American. So thank you for your time. If you appreciate what I'm doing, which I think you should, because literally nobody on the internet is talking the way I'm talking about putting these arguments together, is you should go to www.funkyacademic.com, kick in $5, $15, or $50 a month so I can grow the capacity of the show and do more shows and kind of have a better sense of, and kind of help grow the sensibility, because we have to go through Nick Shapiro's. You have to, not Nick Shapiro, Nick Fuentes. Liberals have to go through a Nayland Haley. You have to go through them. You can't ignore them, because they're actually more progressive than the Ben Shapiro and more American than even I am right now. I'm in the minority position. We're a center-right nation. We have to go through the center-rightness of the nation in order to get to a better nation that like actually secures justice and families and good jobs and political participation for all Americans. You have to go through it. You have to do the extra steps. You know what? I might do a whole show on how ignoring the right doesn't actually solve your problems, because we are a center-right nation and the right is America. So that's like ignoring America to solve America is utopian. You got to go through the right. Go through the right. All right. Thank you for your time. Share this with all your friends. You know, build power. Tell people about this. Get good jobs and make these arguments.